Naomi, who is a single mother, had always dreamed of a life beyond the small town she had grown up in. She had imagined a life filled with luxury, ease, and respect, things she had never had. But after years of struggling, she found herself trapped in a world of dead-end jobs and crushing debts. The dreams she once had seemed so far out of reach, and now she was determined to find a way to escape. Her daughter, Diane, was the one thing Naomi truly loved. Diane, at 19, was beautiful, bright, and full of potential. Naomi saw in her the future she had always wanted. She was convinced that if Diane could have the life of privilege and power, everything would be better for both of them. But as time passed, it became clear that Diane wasn't on track to fulfill Naomi's grand vision. One evening, as they sat in their modest apartment, Naomi sighed deeply, her mind whirling with a new plan. She had just been turned down for yet another loan, and she was growing desperate. Diane, honey, I know you want to finish school, but we are not getting any closer to our dreams. You've got so much potential. Why don't you let me help you in a different way? Naomi's voice was filled with determination, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Diane, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up confused. What do you mean, Mom? Naomi hesitated for a moment, then spoke the words she had been rehearsing in her mind. You are young and beautiful, Diane. Men would pay anything to have you by their side. I know some people who can make it happen. Get you the life you deserve. You can meet the right men, make connections, and we will have the money to live the way we've always dreamed. Diane's stomach twisted, a cold fear spreading across her chest. Are you serious, Mom? I can't. You can. You don't understand. But I am doing this for you. For us, Naomi insisted, her voice a mix of persuasion and something darker, more desperate. You'll get the kind of life you deserve. You will never have to struggle like I did. You will be admired, respected. Diane felt a sickening pit form in her stomach. She couldn't believe her mother was asking this of her. But in Naomi's eyes, Diane could see something that almost broke her, fear. Fear that they would always be stuck, always be small. Reluctantly, Diane agreed, not fully understanding the cost of her decision. At first, it seemed like a simple enough arrangement. Diane met a few men through the connections Naomi had, and it felt like harmless dinner dates. They were older men, wealthy with impressive careers. They would take her out, shower her with gifts, and talk to her like she was special. Diane didn't quite understand why they were interested in her, but the lavish dinners, the sparkling jewelry, the designer clothes, they made her feel valued in a way she had never experienced. Naomi would constantly remind her of the importance of keeping the men happy, of staying charming and poised. You don't have to sleep with them, Diane, Naomi would say. Just get them to like you, get their attention, let them spoil you. But as weeks went by, the dinners turned into private parties. Diane found herself in the company of men who were too eager, too pushy. She told herself she was still in control, still keeping the situation manageable. But deep down, she could feel the pressure mounting. It wasn't just about enjoying fancy meals anymore. It was about securing something, getting the money, the status, the life Naomi had promised her. The first time she slept with one of them, an older businessman who had promised to help fund her education, Diane felt disgusted, her heart racing with shame. But Naomi, her mother, reassured her, pushing aside her guilt. This is how the world works, Diane. You need to do this to get ahead. Don't think about it too much. Diane tried to convince herself that it was for the greater good, that the money would make everything worth it. But with each passing day, the lines blurred, and the man after man that Naomi pushed her towards chipped away at her sense of self. 8 months went by and Diane began to see the cracks in the life her mother had promised her. The gifts and the money flowed, but they never seemed to satisfy Naomi's hunger. She would push Diane further, demanding more and more extravagant gestures from the men in Diane's life. You need a new car, Diane. A better wardrobe. If you don't play the game right, we will never get out of here. As you can see, you have already been enrolled in a good university. All of this will soon be over. Just hang in there, my beautiful child. Diane, once full of promise and ambition, found herself slipping further into a world she didn't recognize. She couldn't tell where her choices ended and her mother's desires began. The men became colder, seeing her less as a person and more as a commodity. They wanted more than just company. It didn't take too long before Diane found herself surrounded by men who cared only about their own satisfaction and who saw her as disposable. The worst part was how her mother started to change too. She wasn't the caring mother she used to be. Instead, she became a force, cold and calculating, always pushing Diane into situations she didn't want to be in. The promises of a better life turned into demands for more men, more money, more luxury. One night, as Diane sat in a dimly lit room at one of the wealthiest men's parties, she realized how far she had fallen. The high-end clothing, the expensive champagne, the conversation that felt hollow, it was all a facade. The men who surrounded her no longer cared about her. They cared about her youth, her looks, and what she could offer them. Diane traveled home that night. Her mother Naomi was waiting for her, expectant and cold. What did he give you? How much did he offer? Diane's heart broke as she looked at her mother. The woman who had once been her protector was now the one who pushed her deeper into a pit of despair. Diane didn't know how to escape anymore. I can't do this, Mom, Diane whispered, her voice shaky. I am not happy. This isn't who I am. Naomi's expression softened for a moment, but then she hardened again. You don't understand. You are so close, Diane. We are almost there. Think about how much you will have when this is over. But Diane could see it now. Her mother's hunger for wealth had blinded her to the cost of her daughter's soul. They had an argument over the situation on ground and Diane stormed out of the house. She could no longer recognize her mother. It took Diane several weeks to break free from the life her mother had coerced her into. It was not easy for her. The money had come, the gifts, the status, but it all felt hollow. She was no longer the girl who dreamed of a future of her own. She was a shadow of herself, a woman who had traded her dignity for a fleeting taste of luxury. One afternoon, Diane sat alone in her apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. The innocence and joy that once filled her heart had been replaced by a cold emptiness. The relationships she had built, if they could even be called that, had all been built on lies and manipulation. And it wasn't just her who had suffered. Naomi, too, had begun to feel the consequences. The money that once seemed endless had dried up. The men who had once adored Diane now discarded her when she no longer provided the excitement they craved. Naomi's dreams of grandeur had collapsed around them. It was Naomi who came to her, broken and desperate. I was wrong, my child. I was so wrong. I thought this would give us everything we wanted, but all I have done is destroy you and me. Her voice cracked, filled with regret. Diane looked at her mother, the woman who had pushed her to this point. She didn't feel anger, she felt sorrow. We can't fix what has been done, Mom, Diane whispered. But we can try to move forward for once. We can build something real, without using people, without trading my soul for a life of luxury. Naomi nodded, tears streaming down her face. I was wrong to put you through that. I'm sorry. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. It wasn't easy to heal, but slowly, Diane began to rebuild her life. It was a long road, one that would take years to recover from the damage, but it was a road she was willing to walk. The price of ambition had been too high, but she had learned the most important lesson of all. True happiness couldn't be bought, and no amount of wealth or status could replace the value of a soul. If you were in Diane's situation, would you obey your mother's instructions? Hope you enjoyed the story. See you in my next story.